First item on the work session tonight will be a discussion of updating the film ordinance. If I can ask Ms. Jessica Walker to come up to the table here. And I will say to the council that we haven't really had a time to do committee updates or department head updates for quite a while. We will get through those, and we will also go through the agenda in tonight's agenda meeting. So if we can, although it looks like we have a lot of time, it's going to be nice to kind of step through the agenda as well. So Ms. Walker.
Thank you. So I've been in contact with Councilman Burrell and other councilmen about some changes to the film ordinance. I know that when this was originally passed and then repealed and replaced with more changes, that there was an intention to go back and kind of restructure that as we saw necessary. So that's what we're back here for. And I've got some recommendations for you. One of the issues that we run into is that if a filming company, if a production company is attempting to use city property, that obviously has to come before you guys. We have to have lead time for that. Our deadlines are pretty strict, understandably. So one of the things that I'm asking is that we differentiate between low-impact films and commercials that are fewer than 10 minutes in length and high-impact films or low-impact films and commercials that are greater than 10 minutes in length. The intention here is not to, we're trying to make it easier for our customers and our citizens to be able to film their commercials and get them into us. By changing that differentiation, we'll also include, though, that if city property is used, we would like to have it received no later than 21 days ahead of time. Currently, it's 10 days ahead of time. That doesn't give us any time for turnaround. If it has to come before you guys, I've got about Lisa, like a 10-day, I have a 10-day deadline to get it to you before the meeting. And so for us to get that application in, to have the conversations that we need to have with them, 10 days is not really sufficient. So if the production company is using city property, we're asking that they get it to us no later than 21 days ahead of time. But if you're not using city property, it needs to be received no later than 14 days ahead of time. Obviously, all of this has to go through multiple departments before we can sign off on the application. So in some instances, when we're getting these 3 days before somebody wants to film or a week before somebody wants to film, it makes it really difficult for us to get it through where we need to get it through and get everybody approved. Also, by differentiating between those two different types of films, we would like to lower the application fee for the low-impact films and commercials that are fewer than 10 minutes in length and lower their security deposit. Currently, the only application fee we have is $1,000, and we ask for a $5,000 security deposit that is returnable. We think that it would be beneficial for people who are planning to film in here, if they're going for fewer than 10 minutes, to have that one-time application fee be $500 and then the $2,500 refundable security deposit. Often whenever people are coming in to film commercials or any kind of thing like that, they maybe don't have as big of a budget as somebody who's coming to film a feature film. So we really don't want to ding them in that regard. Also, right now, we require that all production companies have a Fairhope business license before filming can begin. This is not spelled out in our ordinance. It is a city requirement. I think it would be really beneficial for us on our end to have that spelled out in the ordinance, because we do require it, but it could help us cut down on having the back and forth about why we need to have a business license to do that. And then the only other change I have on here, when we were speaking last week, Councilman Burrell and I were talking about all of the different ways that people film in the city, and one of those is news organizations. I believe we need to add the news organizations to our exempt section. I don't think that that is the same thing as filming a commercial or filming a production or feature film for profit. So we do not spell that out currently in our exemption section. Let's see. In exemptions, we currently say filming or recording for use in a school project by schools located along the eastern shore of Mobile Bay is exempt. I think we need to add news organizations to that if at all possible.
Jessica, on the memo that we have, or the email that we have from November the 20th, and I believe you and I have talked since this time a few times, you have low impact to be less than 3 minutes, and you and I talked and said maybe we should lengthen it. Is that where you come up with the 10?
That's where I came
You
with the
think
10, absolutely.
The 10 minutes, and I think that we could all agree that
Because that
10
also
minutes, 10 minutes is not a high-impact film. And we could have said, we could have left it at 3, because like a television commercial is going to be maybe 60 seconds at most. But then if you get one that's 2 minutes, you don't want to have to come back and make it fall under the high impact. So we kind of thought 10 minutes is, you probably don't get much at all that's produced for 10 minutes. You know,
it's kind of that middle ground that nobody really touches.
But it gives us some leeway. The other thought that I was having, Jessica, since you and I have talked, is do we want to, I understand that part about using city property, but if we do have that low-impact film, if we left that up to staff and mayor discretion, would that help you or would it hurt you in being able to accommodate some of these people that come in? The most recent case was a television commercial that was just, like I said, it's going to be, 30 to 60 seconds. And even if they were using city property, they would have to come to us 21 days ahead of time. But where do you draw the line? Let's say they're standing on the park there, Henry George Park, and they're just they're filming a scene of the bay there. Well, by the letter of the law, they'd have to come to us for permission, and that seems almost excessive as well. So I kind of want to know if we can leave some, I don't want to overwhelm you, but I'd also like to maybe leave some discretion to that.
Were you able to look at some of the other cities?
Yeah, we're a little bit different. We're a little more unique in the way that it goes. And so after we spoke initially about the commercial that Councilman Burrell is discussing, we actually got something in, it kind of like the floodgates opened. So someone wanted to film within 5 days. And so we're really just looking for guidelines. I mean, I'll go with whatever you guys think is best, but I really want to have something that we can go back to and hold people to. That's the biggest concern that I have.
So what I see is on this, in this email on section 9, I certainly agree with that 10-minute. I think that gives plenty of cushion in there for something that might be longer than a commercial, but it's certainly not a feature film. And I don't disagree with that application fee and security deposit. I also agree down on section 10 where you said add news organizations. And I don't know if we have to put in there if they're filming routine stories, because if you say news organizations and you get 60 minutes here and they're filming for a week on some, big story, then they might fall under that exemption when that probably wasn't the intent. So
Absolutely
say,
routine reporting.
Routine stories, or I don't know. Then what's routine? Then you have to define that. But something that maybe come up with some language that would say that it's not some feature story at which they're going to have to shut the streets down and everything else. They shouldn't be exempt from that.
So to go back up to your question about the city property.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask Lisa her opinion on this, because Lisa's my go-to whenever it comes to us kind of enforcing the letter of the law, if you will. So what do you feel about us relaxing that for low impact?
I'm really not sure about this, because you're not supposed to allow anyone to use city property without something giving back to them. So we're probably going to have to get Marcus to give us a legal opinion for this to be added.
Because I think it's a state law.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, but
What's the law?
it's a state law.
To film, I think it's to
To use city property.
Well, my comment was not about they didn't pay the fee or the deposit. Mine was on the notice, on the day's notice.
So this is more of like a rental. I mean, people rent.
Yeah, this was giving you the discretion. You wouldn't be waiving the fees or deposits.
Sure.
You would only, and you wouldn't waive the requirement for the business license.
Right.
You would only waive the
need
14
to get
or
it.
21 days, because you're
Right.
going to ultimately be hit with multiple occasions of 5 days, 3
Right.
days, and they're so minimal that they're just going to go somewhere else if they have to wait 21 days for approval from the city.
Sure. So instead of it coming before you guys, you would just give us the power and the
authority.
discretion.
And that would be in the ordinance. So it's not taking the authority away. We're giving you that authority
Sure.
to do that.
So we'll probably need that legal
opinion.
legal opinion on that. But I mean, if that is something that is allowable by law, then I definitely agree with that. I think it would make it a little bit easier for us.
We leave it to your discretion. You could,
Yeah.
you could accept or deny that, depending on the circumstance.
Right. Is it already assumed that this is really for profit or gain? Because, I mean, people film all the time.
Right.
I mean, so it's really for, is that what, do we need to put that in there? I don't know.
That's a good point, because we know there's a lot of people that film around
Right.
Fairhope.
And will this also include
every week.
drones? Or is that a separate ordinance?
Would you like it to be a separate
Well,
ordinance? Is it
let's
something that we
see.
need to
So-
include in here?
So if I'm down there standing in Henry George Park and I'm filming the bay, I'm not required to have a business license to do that. So I think it would be maybe, some comment of in the practice of conducting business, or if you're in the act of
Right.
performing, conducting business.
Conducting business.
Something.
Commercial.
turning-
For commercial purposes?
Commercial
Yeah.
purposes, yeah.
Okay.
Because, otherwise, taking a picture of the lighting of the trees is, it was filming.
And filming, I
You know,
mean, exactly.
And the way it's written right now, the first sentence says, any filming, well,
Right.
that's not,
Yeah.
that's not the intent.
Revenue generator.
Yeah, well, let me check your phone.
Okay. Anything else? Can you think of anything else?
I think that's a real good start, to come back with that. I think would y'all allow Jessica and I and the mayor to work together to come up with some language to bring forth for consideration, just to prevent another iteration? I think we're 95% there. If y'all would agree to these changes, we're 98% there, just coming up with some language to be adopted in a future meeting.
I have no problem.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Jessica. Committee updates. Councilman Conyers?
Yeah, since we got so much time, I'll just kind of go through the list. First, Historic Preservation Committee is meeting Wednesday, December 11th, 9:30 a.m. at the Museum of History. Right now, where the Historic Preservation Committee stands is, again, as a reminder, they've got a draft ordinance. We're going to be working, I think, a little more on that. But they have been tasked with determining and making a recommendation to the city as to whether or not we should form a Historic Preservation Commission, which is just the next step, and that would not take any authority away from the council. It would just be the first step towards becoming a CDL. They did get some feedback from the state. There are a few more steps they've got to go through to check that box, so I think they're going to want to kind of button that up and then come back to the council with some kind of recommendation. Next, I've got the Environmental Advisory Board. They meet Friday the 13th at 3 p.m. at the library. And one of the last meetings of the Environmental Advisory Board, they drafted a resolution related to the Dias Triangle, so I just wanted to bring that here. And the resolution was that they recommend that the City Council hereby authorizes the Council President and at least one other City Council member to initiate and coordinate a process to implement a use of the property plan in the Dias Triangle to establish the Fly Creek Watershed Collaborative Group to engage key stakeholders, specifically to explore utilizing published data and research the land and water resources in the proximity of the city's property known as the Dias Triangle. Basically what they're saying is that they'd like to see the council form a group that would engage the stakeholders to determine how to best use that property. So I know we've already got a few ideas in motion, and I know still more to be determined. And then lastly, I've got the library board meets Monday the 16th. That's at 4 p.m. at the library. Everything's clipping along pretty nicely with the library. They are about to probably seek some architectural, I guess, insight on how to best lay out that upstairs area that they've taken over. So right now they're trying to figure out how they want to lay that out, what they want to move there, and that'll be the next step. So that's kind of a quick update on all three of those committees.
Okay. Excellent. Councilman Brown?
Yeah, so you see on the agenda tonight, dissolving the Education Advisory Committee and forming the Fairhope Public School Commission, which was part of the special tax district requirement, forming that commission. I think at our next meeting, the proposed membership for that commission will be put on the agenda. And the Ped Bike Committee met. We had the chairman or president of the Sunset Rotary came and spoke to us about the beach mat. And he was looking for the council to pass a resolution. I think we've already done that as far as.
I've not only followed up with that with Lisa, but we had not only passed that, but the mayor and I had already signed a letter and sent that to them accepting that grant.
So the
Quite
council,
some, like months and months ago.
right, so the council's already taken action, so I guess I'll report back to Bob.
I just wanted Bob to get with the committee, because I didn't want to exclude them, and then also get with Richard Johnson, because they're the ones that have to upkeep, and they sweep the beach once a week. So they've been in communication with, that. We don't want to add more to Public Works, and also understand what needs to happen if a storm comes or a hurricane, and so it was just ironing out the details. But
And I ironically ran into Bob at the lighting of the trees and let him know that I had done that homework and that we, in fact, I thought had checked all the boxes that we were supposed to check.
yeah, Richard brought this up to me when we started communicating that, because I don't know that he was really engaged in this process. So
Yep.
that's all we did, is to add that.
Okay.
And I think it'll be a good asset. We just want to make sure that the location is good, again, for safety and being able to successfully sweep the
Right.
beach
right.
still.
So other than that, I guess y'all saw where committee member and local business owner Katie Bolton was, well, the car didn't hit her. She hit the car as it turned in front of her. I have not gotten an update recently. I know she was life flighted to USA
Yes, sir.
Medical Center in Mobile, had surgery on her arm. She broke her arm, but I'm not sure of any other further updates, but that's it.
Okay. Councilman Boone?
The Harbor Board and the Personnel Board will both be meeting next month. Give the dates and let you know what they are.
We had an airport authority meeting last week. We are in some negotiations for another hangar on the west side of the airport. This is for a previous parcel that's just basically being unused. It's just unused space over there on the west side, and we're trying to negotiate with a tenant for that. They would build it. They would build it out, and the same thing, long-term lease. They're paying a ground lease, and then the property would revert to the airport authority in the future. I can't remember if it was 25 or 30 years, but it's another one of those sizable investments. For the east side, we're in negotiations with several different companies or individuals for the construction of hangars there and ground leases on that side of the airport as well. We also had some informal discussions with a businessman that wants to consider the possibility of a flight school for rotary wing aircraft or helicopters. And so that was just kind of the beginning stages of that, and I'll keep you informed as to where that's going. I think that we had to ask the attorneys. There's a lot of legalities when you border a runway as to what can be used and what cannot be used, and so that's going to be posed to some attorneys and for some other opinions before those talks continue. But other than that, what you see going on the east side is an access road from Highway 13. We're looking at putting in a gate that would be operated with a security card or PIN or both, and just trying to make sure that we secure that because that does have runway access. So that would be in lieu of having a locked gate there with a chain on it, and everybody has to have a key to a padlock. So we're looking at that as well. But the east side is pretty much finished up, and hopefully you'll see some build out of that. There was also discussion once again of how to market the west side of that property for business development. That's zoned light industrial M1, and we're still trying to figure out how we can attract tenants to that side. We don't have a road through there, and we have a generic layout of lots there, and we've talked to some realtors about potentially giving us some other ideas on how to market that land. So no movement on that yet, but hopefully some of that will start moving soon. All right, department heads. So I can go through. Ms. Mazur.
Just two very quick things. We are celebrating Thanksgiving dinner down at the Fairhope docks on Thursday. We have some volunteer boaters who are hosting. And as of this morning, we had about 17 people coming, and expect some more. So that's going to be fun. A lot of them are loopers, so the word is out there. Secondly, the clubhouse, Quail Creek Clubhouse, is holding its annual sale in the Pro Shop on December 10th, and simultaneously we are having our first employee happy hour from 4 to 6. And
Simultaneously?
yes,
They'll be drinking and serving?
drinking and
selling?
shopping. That is the old
All right.
retail way of getting money.
Everybody wants to go out and work at the
Oh, yeah.
club.
Hey, we are not dummies around here. And elected officials are invited to attend.
What's the date on that?
December 10th, 4 to 6 is the happy hour. Shop anytime you want.
Ms. Mazur, I was out there on Saturday, and that looked, the clubhouse looked very nice. The patio looked very nice, and good job on that. Just sitting back and looking at it now from even the course, it was vastly improved, and the course was in good shape as
Yeah,
well.
wasn't it?
I get a lot of compliments on the staff out there.
Yep, we're excited about the way things are going.
While we've got you here, to jump ahead to the agenda item that you have on tonight's, that's item 11. You want to keep you from coming back up? Can we get you to discuss the proposed amendments to the rules and regulations for the Fairhope docks?
Okay, yep. We've had an issue that we've sort of ignored but have taken care of, but we need some teeth behind it, with parking of trailers and skiffs, smaller boats on trailers, work trailers, things that are not related to what we want to be doing down there. One trailer in particular was somebody who was working on his boat, and that's fine, but not to leave it overnight. So looking at the potential as we move forward with the use of the land side of the marina, we need to get a handle on parking and what's allowed to be parked. Generally speaking, if you're a long-term slip holder or a liveaboard, you get a parking spot. I mean, that's just standard procedure. But that's only one. You don't get to bring everything else down there and park it and leave it there. So the two issues that we had, we've taken care of, but we need to make the amendment so that we are protecting the marina from overnight parking and from ancillary vehicles that just don't belong there.
Lynn, what is the penalty for violation of this? I mean, do we need to have the language in there? At least, that kind of standard language of the penalty for a violation. Can they be issued a citation? Who enforces this rule?
Oh, we can give them parking tickets. We'll start with that.
It's not an ordinance, therefore it's not based on the code of ordinances and those penalties, so I'm not really sure how we do that as it being a resolution or a policy, unless it's adopted via ordinance and codified.
Yeah, I just thought of that.
Yeah, you're right.
Do we want to wait, or do we want to introduce it as an ordinance and then add the language that's standard for the penalties for violation of one of our codes.
It's an area that is no overnight parking permitted, and, that could be an ordinance, that part of it, and then just slip the ordinance as part of the rules.
Is that something
Can we do that?
easily done tonight? Just introduce it?
Mhm.
That way we can ticket them.
All right. Can I leave that as item 11? It goes a little bit out of our order when we go. when
Yes,
we
you
go
can.
to
Only
orders.
by one.
Okay.
You can
Okay.
address it
Call you
earlier,
down for it.
like move it up if you want.
I'll just tell them it's gonna be an ordinance, but it's gonna be item 11. Okay, yeah, it's only one removed. Okay. All right, very good. All right, thank you, Lynn. Marcus, can you give me 2 sentences to add to that ordinance that basically spells out the penalty will be whatever, we have that standard language for what the penalty is, your standard.
It can be just so, it can say pursuant to code 1-8, which is, if nothing else is added to it, that's the code section we go back to.
Yeah, and the only, Lynn and I, we talked about this because I thought this was only going to apply as the rules and regulations to the people that were down there, but we want it to apply to everybody, correct?
Well, that's the point that's just been brought up that we hadn't thought about. It should apply. There's just no overnight parking.
Because right now, what this is you've got penalty provisions in your leases for violating the rules and regulations.
Right.
So you do have a penalty phase, but it's only for the people that are carrying leases or slip holders down
Right.
at the marina.
Correct.
And that was who the violators were, is my understanding, correct?
That's right. Now we've brought up another potential.
So are we amending the rules and regulations?
We are amending the rules and regulations.
Or do we have a standalone ordinance here?
Now,
It's
if,
rules and regulations, it's whatever y'all want to do. The ordinance would apply to everybody, like if I wanted to go down there and just park a trailer for no reason, but that would be a violation, an ordinance violation, subject to getting a citation from the police department, told to move. What it is right now is it's an amendment to the actual rules and regulations, and there are penalty provisions in the leases that would give them rights to,
That's for the
kick them
leaseholders
out,
only.
terminate the
Right.
lease, do whatever.
for leaseholders only, what it doesn't address and which we didn't think about, are issues like we had last year where people were going out on the private beaches and camping, and they were accessing them via our parking lot. And are they parking a car there? We don't know, because we weren't looking for it.
They're
But this would
on
prevent
private
that.
property though, correct?
But they're going from our parking lot. Yeah. And this would prevent the parking of their vehicle while they go camp on private property. I think it's a 2-step process. If we made it part of the rules and regulations now, and then turned around and made another ordinance, a separate ordinance aside, and just handle the rules and regs amendment tonight.
So keep it as a resolution.
Keep it as a resolution, since our penalty's already in.
Ordinance for the next meeting.
Right.
possibly.
Yeah, I think that ordinance might even need to be looked at for various public parking areas around town. I know of one where I've seen a tractor-trailer rig parked numerous times as if it's their own private parking lot. And I think it's somebody that lives in that area, and that's just where they park their rig,
Mm-hmm.
and it stays there a lot.
Can't do it in their driveway.
Well, I'll tell you where it's at. It's at the soccer fields.
Mm.
Has anybody else seen that tractor-trailer rig parked there
Yes.
numerous times?
Close to the front
Yeah.
of the road.
Yep.
On 13.
It's the same
Okay.
one there.
All right, then we need to look at a different ordinance altogether.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mazur. Thank you. Jessica, did you have anything else now?
I do.
All right.
I'm pretending to be Richard Johnson tonight. I'm going to talk all night long. I'm just kidding. So the Christmas parade's coming up next week, Friday, the 6th at 7 p.m. When we made that change back in October, Eastern Shore Art Center had already secured a sponsor for their art walk. So they are continuing to have their Friday art walk that night. It's going to be that night from 5:30 to 7, sponsored by the Downtown Fairhope Business Association. So we just wanted to make sure that there was no confusion there, that their event still goes on ahead of the Christmas parade. And then, so the day after the Christmas parade on the 7th, that's when our Santa Saturdays start. So that's pretty exciting. Bring your kids out to see Santa. And then finally, a few weeks ago, we had the Connectivity Master Plan workshops with the National Park Service. We had one at the Nick Center and one at the Mill. They were very successful. We got a lot of feedback, which was really great. Anyone who came had an opportunity to fill out a survey talking about connectivity issues and what people hope to see with trails and routes throughout the city. That survey is now online. You can find it. We posted it today on our Facebook page. We'll be putting that out through the e-newsletter, and we'll also put that on the website. So we're encouraging people to go and take those surveys and let us know what you want for trails in the city.
Jessica, what can we do as council members to help out? The idea was to keep the parade on Friday night, which we voted on, but we do still understand that it's nice to have the 2 nights, this Friday and the Saturday night to make an economic impact. So what can we do to help out? Are we gonna close De La Mare on Saturday night, for instance, so people can walk around? Wouldn't we typically do that on First Friday?
We typically do that on First Friday. I don't know that we have made a resolution. It has to be a resolution, right?
Well, we passed it. We said that Saturday night would be the special First Friday, so I thought that might cover it.
I'm going to look to Lisa. Lisa.
It has to be something that, all the merchants buy into as well. So,
Yeah.
we have to just connect maybe with Alex and see.
Well, and the fact of the matter is that Downtown Fairhope Business Association is the sponsor for that First Friday Art Walk at the Eastern Shore Art Center, which is kind of comprises most of those merchants. So I'm not really sure what the answer is here. We obviously want to encourage as many people to come out and shop in Fairhope, shop local for the holidays. But as far as this one particular event, that First Friday, Art Center has put a lot of planning into their December one, which they normally don't have. The only reason they had decided to have it this year is because our parade was on a Saturday night. So we would like to encourage people, if we want to try to do an event on Saturday night. I'm not sure how we would make that happen between now and then, but we are really good at working magic around here.
Social media.
Yeah, social media. We're really good at working magic around here. So
I think it goes counter to what we were trying to do and not changing it to a Saturday night. I'm going to have a talk with the Eastern Shore Art Center. I feel like they should have tried to accommodate the First Friday Art Walk on Saturday night.
well, in their defense, they had been working for a while to plan this event. They had sponsored. They went to such a length as to get a sponsor for it. So
Yeah, well, they have a sponsor at every First
sure.
Friday.
That's all I have.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Creech?
I can just let y'all update y'all on me and Mr. Burrell and the mayor and Lisa and Leslie met with Symbol Clinic, and I put in y'all's box. I don't know if y'all got it yet, but it's a packet from Symbol Clinic, and that's a clinic that it would be just for your employees. It's on your health insurance, and currently Gulf Shores has a Symbol Clinic, Foley has a Symbol Clinic. Baldwin County and North Baldwin Utilities are all the governments that are involved in those, and it makes it where you can, the city of Fairhope, if they had their clinic, you could have a sharing agreement, and where you could share your clinic with Foley employees and Gulf Shores or Baldwin County employees, and then our employees would be able to use their clinics. And it has it where it's a flat rate for your employee to go there and they can get their prescriptions. So we're looking at that. So I gave information to y'all on that, and I also put in your box is our last month's update on our health insurance, so y'all can be informed of how our health insurance is doing. So that's something we've been working on, and then we're working on year-end stuff. So, have any questions?
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Buford?
And good afternoon, Council. And Council, for the Council's benefit and also for the citizens' benefit, wanted to comment briefly about something that will be on the Planning Commission agenda on Monday night. We have an amendment to the subdivision regulations. So this is the approval authority is the Planning Commission. It involves multiple occupancy projects and, of course, MOPs, as we call them, multiple occupancy projects. Component of the subdivision regulations, whenever you have 3 units or more on a single piece of property. The way it is structured currently in the subdivision regulations is that it uses excerpts of the subdivision code. The approval it grants is simultaneous preliminary and final plat approval, to use subdivision language. And this is something we've struggled with at the staff level for a good while now. The issue that arrives is when one of those types of projects is built, there's not a formalized closeout procedure. We handle that and have attempted to handle that by using conditions of approval to make certain that staff receives as-built drawings and other information very similar to a traditional subdivision. That process has become so cumbersome and it sometimes is inconsistent because of the types of developments that our request to the Planning Commission is to just simply have a preliminary and final plat process just like a traditional subdivision. So we'll have the necessary revisions on the agenda of that meeting for the Planning Commission's approval for that. I think that'll be very, very helpful, especially in the area of utilities. And what we encounter a lot of times with an MOP is that it may not have streets or roads that are dedicated to the city, but it does have utilities that are dedicated to the city. We have a final plat process, then that process is absolutely crystal clear what is dedicated to the city, where it's located, and then we know that we have a final document to sign off on by various staff, the various utilities that goes to the county for recording. So this will be something very beneficial. The other effect it will have is it will impose the same deadlines for developing a subdivision as would a traditional subdivision. So when an applicant receives their preliminary approval, they'll have the same 2-year time frame to install the improvements. Don't necessarily have to complete the vertical construction, but to install the various improvements, prepare the as-built drawings, prepare the final plat, and bring it back to Planning Commission for final approval. They would certainly have the opportunity to request extensions if they needed to, just like a traditional subdivision. Wanted to illuminate that for the council's information because it's another example of staff working on when we have areas that are identified in the various codes that need amendment, that we are working on them for amendment purposes.
Does that include PUDs that might include MOPs?
Yes, sir. If it's an MOP, regardless if it's a standalone development or if it's an MOP working the subdivision regulation side of a PUD, it would still apply. Yes, sir. And council, if I can indulge the council for just a moment, I'd like to talk about item number 7 for just a moment.
Okay. Knowing that we're going to ask you a ton of questions.
Yes, sir.
On 6 and 7.
Yes, sir. What I wanted to illuminate for the council is that I'm going to verbalize an additional condition of approval for basically there's some information that I forgot to illuminate the first time we heard the case, and it's that the one of the units within that development is requesting setbacks that are actually in excess of the underlying zoning, but it's not reflected in the staff report. Wanted to make certain we captured it in the condition of approval if it is the pleasure of the council to approve the development, so that way it can be captured and reflected in the PUD ordinance.
You want to go ahead and tell us that, and that doesn't materially affect what we're going to talk about later. Do you want to tell us?
Sure. I'll be happy to explain that, Council President, and I appreciate the time to explain it to you. In Unit 2, Unit 2 is the area that would contain the apartment buildings, and the underlying zoning requested is R5, high density multifamily. And the way that is structured in the zoning code is that it requires 30-foot front, 35-foot rear, and 10-foot side setbacks. What the applicant is requesting is, in lieu of those setbacks, have a 30-foot setback on the front and on the sides, and define that as basically the east property line, the north and south property lines. Then along the west property line, they're proposing a 40-foot setback. And so the 40-foot would be the rear, using my air quotes, All others would be front and sides. So that's actually in excess of the requirement of the underlying zoning. And I just oversight on my part, did not illuminate that the last time we considered the case. Wanted to make certain that we captured it, and I've got a condition of approval to memorialize that if we do end up with approval tonight. I try to do that to make certain Ms. Hanks has that information to capture it in the ordinance when it comes time to adopt it, or to record it.
So Buford, correct me if I'm wrong, so Unit 3 is the actual west side of the proposed PUD. So this setback, when you talk about the 40-foot on the west side, would that be 40 foot from the eastern boundary of Unit 3?
It would be the 40-foot rear, as they're calling it, the rear setback, if you took the property line dividing Unit 3 from Unit 2. I'm sorry, Unit 2. Unit 2, going by memory here. Unit 2 is the center unit where all of the apartment buildings are going. So you would have a...
Yep.
That's correct. I stand corrected. It's correct. So 40 feet from that westernmost property line between Unit 2 and Unit 3, there would be a 40-foot rear setback on the apartment building side.
If this was the proposed single-family, which is 3.
Correct.
And then I don't know if it's exactly the same, but then this is 2. So this would be 40 foot from this line right here?
Yes, sir. That's correct. And then the rest of the way around would be 30 feet, all the way around. And I figured we'd have a bit more time to talk about it here,
Okay.
and then we'll debate. We'll discuss the normal items that we'll do during the council meeting.
Okay.
All right, council. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You got something on it?
President, just a heads up, and I think this is appropriate for some of the agenda items tonight, but Monday, also at the Planning Commission meeting, we will have a proposal to amend the PUD language in the zoning code. And that is a lot of words, but in essence, threefold. One, there's an administrative reason to do that. Right now, if anyone comes in and asks us about an existing PUD, it takes sorting through box after box of information and find the history. So what we want to do is attach all of that history to one document that gets, if there's an amendment, that singular document gets amended. That would be what we've titled the Master Development Plan. That takes into account not only our site plan, but any supplemental information that can look at traffic stuff. All of that usually supports an application doesn't get codified when the ordinance. Usually that's just the site plan. So those things are very important to a PUD. Will get wrapped up into a master development plan. When there's an amendment, that will be on the applicant to bring in that amendment. So there's a document that follows each PUD throughout its history, and we can quickly reference that for what's allowed and what needs to be, if anything needs to be amended. Questions about that?
Well, back to something that Buford was talking about on these the timing of some of these MOPs, and I was asking that one question I asked him about, would this concern MOPs within PUDs, but then just generically for PUDs, I'd like to, if it's not covered by what Buford discussed earlier, some sunset clauses on these PUDs. In other words, a PUD that's approved, 10 years prior to anything happening, there's something needs to be done that says, and I don't know how you define if you start, somebody takes a shovel and turns over some dirt and says, well, we started on it,
Right.
10 years ago, something material that would there needs to be a sunset clause on these things. They can't just stay in perpetuity.
Right. And the proposal we have right now is it's good for 365 days with an opportunity to ask for 2 6-month extensions. So it could be 2 years, but that also requires kind of a phasing plan so we can interject there if, like you said, a little dirt's turned over but nothing else ever done. That's something we can look at the details on. So that's certainly in our vision, and it has to revert to something. So that may be a debate.
Right. That's the question, is what does it revert to?
And I'm going to propose the most restrictive, and we can debate that both in Planning Commission and
Revert to
Council.
R1?
RA. 3 acres. RA is what I'm going to ask for. That typically is, you know, we and the reason some of these PUDs may happen at a commercial corner and we revert to R1, and that's not the intent of that in comprehensive plan. Now we have a zoning type that isn't. So I will propose RA, and we can debate the merits of that or other opportunities.
And I don't have an issue with going the most restrictive, but would it make sense for it to revert to whatever it was before they?
That's a tough one because
You let it go back to the county.
the boundaries you can, and there's some, and kind of the way we take annexations and how those kind of spend a short period of time at zoning for us, and then there's also boundaries can change. So what is the zoning if the legal boundaries have changed within that PUD?
Gotcha.
There's some hurdles there. At site plan review, that's what it says, and that's kind of created some problems. But in related to the MOP, I think the PUDs, with some of the other criteria we're adding, should be looked at that almost like an MOP. So by the time it gets to MOP phase, at least conceptually, those concepts are already there, and then work out the details in the MOP phase. So.
And, you know, also along those lines, and if you've covered this, there's a lot, there's a lot to this. It's a complicated issue, but so if you've said it or Buford said it, I apologize. You know, within PUDs now, we're coming up with these multiple lots, just like both being, or 2 of the 3 being considered tonight. They have, you know, multiple, I've seen them called units or called phases.
Mm-hmm.
If you develop one phase of a PUD, but you don't start developing the other phase of the PUD, does that still invoke the sunset clause? How does that factor in? So you may, the Fly Creek PUD is the one that really I'm thinking of right now, is they built the public shopping center, but then the additional portions of that PUD remained, nothing happened on that for
So having a
10
time
years.
frame?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Having a time frame.
So does that apply to
All
each
units.
unit or
Right.
individually, or what? I mean,
There's a
something to
distinction
consider. I
there.
don't know if you can answer that right now.
Right. And it is something we can debate because I think it warrants that conversation. One of the requirements we're going to request in that master development plan is a phasing plan, and how we would love to see actual buildings and exactly what it looks like. But certainly if there's just a lot, when is that going to be addressed? And that will become part of the PUD. So if that's projected 3 years down the road and doesn't happen, the PUD doesn't expire. It doesn't revert to RA, but now that at least there's a chance for the city to come back and review that process. If it's 10 years down the road, does that still match the goals of our comprehensive plan that may be completely different in a decade? So that you'll see that will be in Planning Commission Monday night, and if y'all have any questions on that, I'd be happy to ask.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Pat?
I don't have anything pressing, thank you.
All right. Shane, you have anything from the PD? Jay?
Item 21, does anybody have any questions? That's me. It's about the sewer truck. Back on.
Any questions about the sewer? I'll give you a compliment, though, is that I've had nothing but compliments from the citizens about how y'all handled, and for you too, Richard Peterson, about how it's been handled, that although it's an inconvenience, that people understand it and realize y'all really worked hard with the citizens to try to find the best way to be least disruptive. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
I think it helps that the sign that we printed was,
Yeah, we went back and forth.
I
I
know.
have some more in my office.
oh, okay, but I mean, it was just about excuse our progress while we, improve the quality of health for the Mobile Bay. So there's.
Is that the truck out looked
Yes,
at?
it is.
Same truck?
Yeah, it's the exact same truck. The benefit, of course, for us is it's a bigger truck than we thought we were going to be able to afford because it's a demo model. The other thing is none of these trucks are on the shelf. So this one's available to us now. And that's why I tried to run to get it on the agenda, because according to the salesperson, there is somebody else. I don't want to force our hand, because they could be, these things happen. But we might have to wait. All kidding aside, if we don't get that truck, we would probably be looking at least 12 months to get another one, because they have to build them. They just don't have them. They're not Chevrolets, they don't have them on the shelf.
You should have brought pictures of the old truck
Yeah.
compared to this truck.
But the old truck still has value too. This
Barely.
Public Works is going to get some use out of it. Richard Johnson's not here, but we're going to probably donate it to him. All right.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
And they're also working on Nichols, doing point repair work and reinstating some laterals there. And of course, we had a little delay on the lift station down on Mobile Street, but I think we're about to work through all that and get it back started again, so that should be going on. And we've got the contractor for the site work on Nichols and Young substation site picked up the contracts, and hopefully they'll be able to turn everything around pretty quick, and maybe between Thanksgiving and Christmas get most of the excavation work done on the site. So everything's moving, and the contractor's been very good, and the citizens have been extremely patient and have been, we've tried to accommodate what we can with traffic control and letting them know, where the issues are with detours, and they've been gracious, and I can't tell you how appreciative I am of that. And it's Iron Bowl week.
I didn't even know.
You didn't?
Are you serious?
And only thing I got to say about that, if I was Lee Corso, I'd lean back and pick up an Albee helmet and put it on my head right now and wave at you. But
I'm
but
the
I'm not
only
Lee Corso.
non-Auburn person at the table right now. I didn't say I'm the anti.
We got our fingers crossed anyway. We're looking forward to it.
Not Crimson Tide either. Mr. Peterson, we had a lady come to the council meeting and speak at the end of 2 of our council meetings over the last couple of months, and she had complained of some unpleasant odors coming from our system south end of town. Somebody help me out. Exactly. That was the Twin Beach station.
Twin Beach.
I had a citizen in that area call me last week and asked me for a status, and I told him I'd give him a status. What's the status?
We have installed the odor control filter, and I've heard nothing but compliments about that have been installed at this point. Now, the vendor of that's going to be periodically checking it, and we'll find out what the life of the filter is, and we'll see how.
When was that installed?
Gosh, it was probably 3 weeks ago, maybe. I can't remember, but about a month ago.
My suspicion was that the person that was tasked to ask me may have been tasked, maybe a couple of weeks prior to them getting with me and asking me, and that it had already been installed is what I.
And I've talked to 2 people who are intimately familiar with that location and go by it a lot, and they have both said they haven't noticed it at all since we put that on.
There's no spills or anything like that at that?
No, sir.
We haven't had anything there?
Well, no, knock on wood.
Well, I just want to make sure.
But everything's holding up good and working well. We still got work to do. I mean, we're working toward the Church Street final planned product to get out, but that's, as we start looking at drainage and start looking at ADA compliance, start looking at water and start looking at, the price doesn't stay where we thought it once was. It continues to move up a little bit, just so you know. It's probably going to be, there'll be some sticker shock, I think, when we open the prices, but we'll work through that.
Okay.
I don't know what else to tell you. I hate that, but it's, the economy is in such a way now. The contractors, they're not that hungry. I don't think. I mean, Kevin, Robert, y'all done.
They're not hungry.
They're going to work on it. They're going to get paid for it.
They're going to get paid for it. And so, but I don't think we need to wait for the next recession to start doing all this either.
All right. I want to encourage council also to just send those to me, and I'll make sure that we get a quick response, because I know that Robert does that, and I appreciate it. But anytime we have something like that, we can answer it quickly. So.
Need y'all have any
Yeah, I know they're just kind of getting started, but is there any kind of time frame for those two sewer infrastructure projects as far as completion? Bayou and the lift station?
The Bayou project is probably 120 days out. Church Street, I think, is going to wind up being a year in terms of contract time, and I'm pretty confident we'll be advertising that. I was thinking this week, but it may be first part of next week, and that'll probably be a 6-week advertisement period. And we've set it up where we're calling out the dates of the Mardi Gras season and arts and crafts and Christmas parade, and there are certain limitations to what they can be doing during those times. But other than that, there's going to be block by block, and we're going to try to backfill as we go, and we're going to try to keep things as, active as we can, but there's going to be some places where it's going to be an inconvenience. But we'll get through it.
What about the lift station down at Mobile Street? The lift station as far as...
Yeah, we had an issue with a gas conflict on where we were trying to connect the new wet well to the old sewer line, and we've had to... We were going to use the existing wet well as the manhole and just recondition it, but that became a pretty costly item to the contractor. So we looked at going back to the doghouse manhole we were going to put prior to the wet well, the fiberglass, and then tie into the wet well, but move it back enough to get past the gas line. And I think the contractor's at a point now where he's ready to start moving on that option. But we
a couple months.
Sir?
Still a couple months, you think, from being complete?
I think if they can get everything going, of course, this is a bad time of year between Thanksgiving and Christmas to get things done, but yeah, a couple of months will probably be a good estimate for time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mike?
I don't really have anything pressing. Lights came on, so lighting of the trees was a success. We're still working on, I think I told the council at the last meeting, the bids that came back for the tree trimming were a little bit higher than what we thought. We have a meeting with Richard Johnson week after next to look at some options that I might bring forward to you guys and try to get a recommendation of how to handle that and be able to not only meet our requirements for tree trimming, but the whole city, Parks and Recs and Public Works and everybody. So, but it's up in the air right now of how we want to proceed.
When could we start seeing some major movements on our substation upgrades? I've seen the transformers down at the new site.
Yeah, I got the contracts back from the contractor today. I got to get them to the mayor for her signature. And then they're going to start ordering parts, and they're anticipating construction probably starting in June of next year. And they're going to kind of run Nichols and Twin Beach concurrently. So Twin Beach is our priority, but we don't want to hold up Nichols to get all the parts in for Twin Beach.
Okay.
So as they're going to kind of start on Nichols, and when they get everything together for Twin Beach for that first transformer, they're going to switch over to that, get that first transformer in place, get that load work done, and then go back to Nichols until the second transformer is ready to go, and they got all the parts and pieces for that, and then kind of go back and forth. So they're kind of running those two concurrently, and then when they're done with that, we can look at what we're doing for the other two substations.
Will they have happy hour concurrently with that?
Possibly, for what we're paying them. Yeah.
You started saying that concurrently. I was thinking about what Lynn was saying.
Right.
Went through my mind.
It's our new buzzword.
I couldn't help it.
But that's about it going on. We're getting ready to start our line patrols again. We found quite a few things that the crews fixed. Last year it worked out really well, so we're going to start doing that annually. And they're really going to emphasize anything that needs to be trimmed right now, have my crews do it just to get it safe while we're in this transition.
Okay.
So, anything for me?
Any questions?
Thank y'all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Eric?
Just wanted to give everybody an update, let you know, we we've got a lot of stuff going on now. I had told the mayor and some of y'all a while back, we had kind of seen a decrease in the number of monthly single-family permits we were having there for about 5-6 months. Well, it's jumped back up. So, we had a couple of builders, they came and dropped off 15 sets of plans within a day. So that's picking back up. What we're also having is a lot of commercial. So I want to let folks know, if you're going to Thomas Hospital, they're going to be in the middle of 4 fairly significant projects going on. They're renovating most of the whole first floor of the MOB, at least half of it, the medical office building. They're doing the same on the 4th floor. Then there's 2 projects that are going to be going on inside the hospital on the 2nd floor, and there's another area I don't recall where. So there's going to be a lot of construction work going on at Thomas, and we're seeing more commercial stuff coming in. We're getting ready to do some site work on a small commercial project right at the southwest corner of Twin Beach and Booth Road. Let me back up. No, it's not. It's the northwest corner. It's where that house is now. That's an unzoned parcel, so they're going to use that for a commercial building is what they're going to put there. And they've submitted for the site plan, the land disturbance plan. They haven't submitted building plans yet. And I get a lot of questions about the Fairhope Hardware Building downtown. The architect and the owner are talking. They're looking at their plans and revising a few things, but they are intending, from what they've told me, to proceed with it. But we're kind of in a holding pattern right now, waiting on them. And that's also the same with what is going to be the chocolate shop, which is right next door to Honey Baked Hams on the south side of Fairhope Avenue. It's right in between the First Bank and Fairhope and Honey Baked Hams. That's going to be a fairly significant renovation too, and the owner and architect are working together to get some revisions back to us, and then they'll continue on.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and go through the agenda real quick. I'll skip 5, 6, and 7 because those will be, I'm sure, discussed when we get to those items. We'll ask for staff to come up and, answer any questions that we have. There's a possibility that we'll ask the developer or anybody representing the developments to come forward and answer questions as may be desired by the council. Item 8, this concerns the repealing of the EAC. Robert, are you available to answer questions regarding that and the reasons why? This is more housekeeping with the passage, as Robert said a little bit earlier, with the passage of the overlay district. There will be in item 9, an ordinance establishing the Fairhope Public Schools Commission. So some of our paperwork that includes the language of Education Advisory Committee needs to be replaced with Fairhope Public Schools Commission. So that relates to items 8 and 9. Lisa, we'll have to get that introduced. Is this something that you recommend we should have a layover until the next meeting? These are not rezoning. Do y'all have a preference on that?
That's strictly up to
council?
you guys.
Pardon?
That's strictly up to you if you
Yeah,
want to
council,
go ahead
do y'all-
and adopt them.
Do y'all have what are y'all thinking on this? I mean, it's up to you when you get into the meeting, but is there a reason to delay on these? I mean, there's, those things kind of, they have to happen.
It's bookkeeping, yeah.
I mean, okay, I think those are going to be unanimous. So if you wish to make a motion for immediate consideration, I think that you may get a favorable result on that tonight, and it'll keep our December meetings shorter. Item 10, the resolution in support of world kindness. I don't know that we'll have any questions on that, but who would be, Mayor or Jessica, are you here to answer questions? Mayor, you
Well,
want
it was just a
give
matter.
quick overview on that?
It was just a matter of having somebody designated to facilitate, ambassadors, and I'm appointing the junior city council to do that, and they'll be contacting the schools, among other organizations, so we can celebrate this, hopefully as an annual day, which was on the last agenda, but We'll do it for the whole month.
Okay, I just caught something there in that last whereas, it says proclaims its support on the 13th day of November. So probably need to just make a quick clerical change on that.
What, that will stay the same, because that's the International Day.
Oh, it did happen on the 13th.
Right.
Oh,
But
you
there's
did do the
still-
proclamation?
yes.
So we're doing this after the
But there
fact?
still has to be, there's a lot of work that goes into that,
Okay,
Start next year.
so,
all right. Is that always on the 13th of November?
I don't know.
Yes.
It is? Okay.
Okay, so that it could be for next year, too. Okay. All right. Very good. See, item 11. So if I heard that right, we were going to call that an ordinance, and now we're going to back to just what it is. It's a resolution amending the rules and regulations. Okay.
Take care of anybody.
If you have any questions for that, you can ask Lynn during the meeting. Item 12, it goes back to the language that was in the purchase of the K-1 Center, and I'm just in here because I signed those agreements prior, but changing the language from EAC to the Fairhope Public Schools Commission. That's just bookkeeping. Item 13 is authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement for the preliminary engineering for the turn lanes at Gayfer Avenue. And Richard's not here, so I know, Jessica, you said that you're Richard Johnson tonight.
Yeah, I
but,
can speak to that.
If you need to, this is not something that's new. This has been discussed 2 or 3 times. I don't know if there'll be any questions on that, but you're available for that. And then item 14 is allowing, authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement for the construction and traffic signal upgrade at that intersection. So 13 and 14 are related to the same upgrade there at that intersection. 15 is more bookkeeping. 16, you could ask the treasurer if you have any questions. You should have a list, whether in your book. It's a pretty short list. Pretty short list this time. Item 17 is authorizing the mayor to execute the contract with our grants writer. The same one we've had for quite a while. 18 is just something that we need to do to prepare the actuarial evaluation for our OPEB liability for the fiscal year. Is that correct? Ending 9/30/19, this past fiscal year? Okay. Those are employee benefits other than pensions.
That's required for this audit, and this is, we're kind of on the late on getting this done. It should have been something that should have been started in January, so I'm trying to get this done.
Okay. That's required for audit. All right, number 19 is authorizing the mayor to execute the contract for the band. Who picked the band this year? Does anybody know anything about them?
I've heard they're awesome.
They got a good name. So item 20 is securing some gas pipe. Item 21 is the vacuum truck. Was this the vacuum truck you were talking about, Jay? Okay. Items 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27 are all items that were approved during the passage of the budget related to the community development. And so what Lisa and I did was we're 2 months into our fiscal year. And so if you calculate how much we should have set aside for those community development funds through the first 2 months, luckily we were able to pick out all of those apportionments which exactly equaled how much we should be spending after 2 months. And we also kind of looked at timing on that, and we once again got lucky. For instance, if you look at the $8,000 to the Fairhope Film Festival, well, it just ended, so now would be the perfect time to give them their appropriation. Ecumenical Ministries, the $10,000 to Ecumenical Ministries, this is the perfect time. The holiday season is the time when they probably see the people with the most needs. And so we kind of took that into account as well, but it all happened to add up to exactly what we should be giving out 2 months into the year. 28 is just a request from the Fairhope K-6 Parent-Teacher Corporation. 29, we'll ask the police about that application, and that's it. Any questions? All right, let's go ahead and adjourn, and try to get back here a few minutes before 6 so we can get started on 6.